Do you impugn motives? I'm Tim Greenwood, and this is Windows on the Word. Impugning motives is the presumption and the judgment of others' guilt without benefit of any further hearing. If faith refers to any good faith commitment to enter into a relationship that's bound by any type of contract, agreement, covenant, or other trust, then sin is the breaching of that relationship, regardless of who the parties of that relationship are. It's equally possible to sin against another person as it is to sin against God. Therefore, sin is actually a breach of contract, or perhaps better stated, it's a breach of relationship. So then, how does one breach a contract or a relationship? The signing or the commitment to a contract, either physically or verbally, is summed up in that voluntary good faith commitment and its successful fulfillment. A breach, then, is anything that breaks that commitment, impedes the contract, or prevents the fulfillment of that contract. Now, the Bible illustrates under the Old Covenant, any breach of covenant or a contract was automatically punishable by death. Since every single person that committed to those contracts breached it at least once, except Jesus, you'd think that no one would still be left alive. And that would be true if not for something that God came up with called substitutionary sacrifice. Now, substitutionary sacrifice allowed the person in breach to pay a penalty for that breach through the death of a valuable animal which stood in that breach and served as justice and allowed the breach to be covered over or overlooked. But there were many who actually did die in breach, where it was judged that their breach was willful and a premeditated act. Now, in Bible language, this sin was impugned to them by the Lord, who was the legal sitting judge of record in the court of Israel. And some were executed and others died awaiting their execution. The reason that the Lord was able to impugn was because the Lord is qualified to be the judge, whereas we're not qualified to be the judge. Now, we as New Covenant Christians are actually qualified to judge, but the only one that we're qualified to judge is ourselves. And if we would actually do what we're qualified to do, then we'd be able to make our every breach whole again through Jesus dying as our substitutionary sacrifice. Now, under the Old Covenant, one was considered guilty until proven innocent. Now, as born-again New Covenant Christians, because Jesus has paid the penalty of our breach, we're now considered innocent. You impugning motives is you seating yourself in judgment over another person and judging them guilty of sinning against you or somebody else before you've even heard the whole matter. And if you're wrong in your judgment, then guess what? It's you that's acting in bad faith. It's you that have sinned. And it's you that are in breach of covenant for defamation of character and ruining somebody else's good reputation. And even if it turns out that you judge correctly against that other person, you're still in breach for illegally convening a court and illegally impersonating a judge, which in this case is putting yourself in the place of God. Either way, anyone who impugns the motive of another person ends up sinning against somebody. But let's say that somebody actually has breached a relationship. The question should be, is he or she willing to mend that breach and make the other person whole again? And if so, he or she should be able to be given the opportunity to do so and then to continue on into that relationship. And if he or she is willing, but for some reason unable to make things whole again, the Bible instructs us to show mercy and to forgive the sin. Now, of course, if he or she actually is able but unwilling to mend that breach, then that constitutes a dysfunctional relationship, which likely needs to be discontinued. Now, here in the United States, one is considered innocent until proven guilty. And before one's judged guilty, there's at least a hearing or a trial of the entire matter. Therefore, wouldn't it be wise to follow what the Bible has to say? And judge not, lest you become the one who is judged.